So, do you think this pointing thing has been done to death?
What do I think? What do you think it's been done to death?
No, I'm asking you. What do you think?
No, I want you to answer. Like, they've done this
why are you
thing.
pointing at me? You're pointing at me.
No, I'm asking you. Hi, welcome back to Video Connection. I'm Dan, this is Aaron, and today we're talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, written by Phil Lord, Christopher Miller, and Dave Callahan. It's directed by Joaquim Dos Santos, Kemp Powers, and Justin K. Thompson. It stars Shameik Moore, Hailee Steinfeld, Brian Tyree Henry, and many, many more. It's rated PG and it's currently in theaters, which is where you should see it.
Miles Morales catapults across the multiverse, where he encounters a team of spider people charged with protecting its very existence. When the heroes clash on how to handle a new threat, Miles must redefine what it means to be a hero.
So, Aaron, what did you think of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse?
I'm going to go with the cliche and call it amazing, or perhaps even spectacular.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, sorry. But it was just awesome. I feel like they took what they did the first time and just sort of doubled down on everything and then added some layers and, I might have some nitpicks here and there, but once again, they did something that is so unique in so many ways and still told a great story at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really think that this movie and the one before it are triumphs of filmmaking and just as creative expression. I know many, many people have enjoyed these, and that's great that something so artistic and creative can manage to appeal to that broad of an audience. The fact that these movies can be financially successful is great, but that's almost secondary to me of just the achievement of a movie this artistic existing.
It is amazing to me that something that is so visually and narratively complex can all hold together, tell a story that has a heart to it, and, not just end up being a giant mess.
Mm-hmm.
And they did it.
And they also managed to do it while being a true, 4-quadrant movie where it's got a complex storyline that adults can appreciate, but it doesn't have any of the objectionable content that would prevent the younger audience, who might just be there for the action and the jokes and the cool visuals, to be upset by. It's one of those movies that the whole family really can go to. In my showing, there were kids under 10 in the row in front of me, and I also saw a woman who looked to be about 85, who was there on her own, apparently just because she was into it.
Mm-hmm.
Hope I didn't ice your game, man.
No one my age says those words in that order.
And the fact that this movie can have that broad of appeal while being like this just off-the-wall artistic, I think really speaks to the accomplishment that they've managed to pull off here.
Just adding to the pot of all the, people they're including, you've got this thing that's got all these comic book references and it's hitting, nerdy Easter eggs from decades of content, from shows, from comics, from movies. You've got the Soni stuff, you've got the MCU stuff, you're tying all these things together. It would be almost impossible for one person to catch every single thing that they did in there. Just one of a million. I'm sure much like myself, when the Scarlet Spider shows up and he's all angsty and they draw him with all this extra shading and cross-hatching and he says everything he's thinking and it's just so deliciously gritty 90s comic book. It was like, you did that for us. Like, I appreciate that so much. But then they did the same thing with, this cartoon and that movie reference and some of the things they reference are stuff that happened a few months ago and, some of them are things that happened 60 years ago and I loved it.
I also think it's important that you don't have to catch all of those references. Well, the hardcore fans will definitely be, Spider-Man pointing at all kinds of stuff. You can also just sort of appreciate that there's a billion different versions of this character out there, and you understand what's going on, even if you don't know who all of them are or have never seen all of them before.
Absolutely.
So above all, I think this movie is an audiovisual feast. I know sometimes we throw around the phrase every frame a painting when talking about films, but in this case, it's almost the literal truth. Every single frame of this movie is the result of a lot of hard work by a lot of really talented artists, and it's just amazing to see on the big screen, which is where you should see it. And also the sound is nice. The soundtrack, once again, is really good and fits really well with the visuals. And of course, the voice cast all does a great job.
I feel it's worth noting that I had the privilege to see it in a Dolby sound theater, and there were multiple points where something really big was happening and I was physically feeling the rumble of the explosion, the crushing, whatever it was. And yeah, that extra layer in that sound design that was having a physical impact on me was pretty awesome.
Nice. Also, speaking of the voice cast, I wanted to say a special shout out to Brian Tyree Henry, who for me is sort of the secret MVP of this film series. I think that his character Jeff, who is Miles' dad, is sort of the understated heart that's kind of holding everything together. The rest of the cast is all great, but I think he's sort of the character that makes it work.
Ooh, okay. Miles, are you trying Mira, eso es imposible.
And it's a very realistic depiction of a good dad. He doesn't always get everything right, but you know that he's always trying, and you know that he actually loves his family, and he's also strong enough to show vulnerability and, you know, talk about his feelings and stuff, which you should be able to do.
Even when it's hard. I just want to give a quick shout out to Shea Whigham, who is another person in the cast. He plays Captain Stacy. If there's one actor in Hollywood that I would pick to interview on our show, that's who I would pick. So if you're watching this, send us a message.
If I had to pick one thing that I think might be a little bit of a flaw, this one leans a little bit more into the comic bookiness in a way that feels a little bit more inside baseball in terms of, you know, not just the breadth of characters, as we've talked about, but also sort of revering the idea of a canonical storyline event, you know, that comic books all have, like the origin story. There's a little bit of that I feel like people who didn't grow up with comic books might be a little lost on that. And there are also a few moments that I think might lose some of the younger audience members, not just the complexity of the storyline, which I think is more complex than the first movie, but also there are more heartfelt conversations between characters where nothing too exciting is happening. And these are important scenes, and I applaud them for including them because, you know, this is good stuff to have. This is good character development. But I did notice that a few of the younger audience members were sort of crunching on the ice in their cups and playing with the buttons on their seats during some of these scenes, waiting for the action to get back. It's a minor criticism, but I think it is something that if you're a parent taking young kids to it, you might have a little bit of boredom from them at a few spots, but you should take them anyway.
Yes. I suppose on that note, it's worth mentioning the movie is kind of long. I believe it's over 2 hours and 20 minutes, so whatever that's worth for the people with the kids. To your point, you know, I think the first movie was kind of a tighter story that was a little bit more of sort of a hero's journey with this kid, and you meet him and he goes through, you know, the events that happen to him, and then they do some of the comic book craziness, but I think they keep it just a little bit more contained. And in this one, they did not contain it. They just let it kind of, you know, build and go out. And I mean, that's part of what makes it really cool, but it's definitely a bigger, heavier thing to digest.
Right.
And speaking of animated content, I happen to have another YouTube channel called LaserFred, where you can watch the show Cargo Town if you're interested in silly cartoons. Check the description for the link. Just a little bit of criticism. The movie opens up focusing on Gwen's character, and we get to spend a little time with her before we get into the larger story. And they did such a good job of getting me invested in her that when they moved away from her, I was kind of annoyed. And I was like, I would just like to watch the Gwen movie.
Want to get out of here?
Can there also be a separate Miles movie later? That's a compliment because I think they did such a nice job with the setup. I'm only kind of half criticizing it because I'd only half believe myself saying this out loud. But I think they jammed so much stuff in that they really had about 2 movies worth of story here that could have actually been 2 separate movies that had, you know, a more specific focus. I say half because I still think they overcame what I'm describing. I think it does all hold together and it does work. An embarrassment of riches is the term one would use to describe that situation. So Dan, would you recommend Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse?
Yes, I would recommend it to everyone. It is not just a good animated movie, it is a good movie, period. I just want to mention for the record that animation is not a genre, it is a medium. And this movie in particular is one of the strongest examples out there to show the power of animation to tell stories in a way that live action would struggle to replicate, no matter how big of a budget for CG they have.
Hear, hear.
And what about you? What did you think?
I also will vote yes. It is just truly an awesome movie, and it really is for everybody. So if you like movies at all, you should go see it. This might be the quintessential go see it in the theater movie. There is so much for you to feast on visually that you really, really should see it on a screen that large.
Mm-hmm. That's all the time we have for now. Thanks for watching Video Connection. Be sure to like and subscribe, and let us know in the comments below if you have any comments or criticisms. And we'll see you next time.
See ya.